again. Let me just share this first. Then we can see. Oh, dear. Give me 2 seconds. Share some. I just can't believe it, man. Newcastle have won. Spurs have lost. Let's see what we can do. Be honest, right? If you're watching this now, do you want him? I want to ask you now, if you're watching this live, do you keep him or does he go? That's what I want to know. So that's 29 games this season Tottenham Hotspur have played in the Premier League. We sit 13th in the table. We've won 10 games. We've drawn 4 games. And we've lost 15 games now. 15 games. Christian Gross. Here's an interesting little fact for you that was shared with me. It was shown with me by somebody who, I won't name just in case they don't want it. Yeah, whatever. Christian Gross, the much maligned, almost like the sort of the parodied worst Premier League manager of all time. He got 34 points from his 27 Premier League matches. Postecoglou currently has 30 points from his last 27 Premier League matches. Just some food for thought there. Is this all Ange Postecoglou's fault? No. Are the factors involved, injuries and everything like that? Yes. Should we just allow ourselves to continue to be gaslit into accepting that this is all that Tottenham Hotspur are capable of? This is all that this Tottenham squad are capable of? No, I don't think we should be. I don't buy it. It's as bad as I've ever known Tottenham to be. There is zero confidence, game to game, that we are going to be able to get anything from any match that we play in anymore. I have zero confidence whatsoever that Tottenham can turn up against any opposition. For as long as I've been able to remember, Tottenham have always been, an all right side. We've been very bad at some points, but we've always had a baseline that would dictate that there are just certain games that Tottenham will win, right? And people will say things have changed. Fulham aren't. You can't compare, say, Fulham now with Fulham of 15 years ago, 10 years ago. They're a different Fulham now. Tottenham don't exist in isolation. Tottenham don't exist in stasis. Yes, I understand there's various factors outside of football, at least outside of the 90 minutes on the pitch. The business side of football has changed drastically. But Tottenham aren't immune to that. Tottenham have grown with that. Tottenham are one of the Tottenham are one of the richest and most business savvy clubs in existence. So this idea that, Fulham have got an influx of cash, Fulham have grown exponentially, the Premier League isn't what it used to be. Yeah, sure, but it's all relative, Tottenham have had a couple of years of making bad signings and everything. Yes, I completely buy that. But at the same time, Arsenal had a few years of signing really bad players, terrible transfer business. And they managed to keep a baseline. They managed to keep a bottom level to their performances, even when they were awful, even when people would slate them under Emery. The latter years of Wenger, when people would slate them, there was still always an acceptable baseline. There was a basement that you could expect Arsenal to perform at. And Tottenham, for as bad as, and look, the thing is, there's a lot of people. I've been talking about this on Twitter, and a lot of people have been saying to me, "That was just Kane and Son. That was Harry Kane, and that was Son." Kane and Son haven't led the line for Tottenham since 1994, right? Since the inception of the Premier League. You're kind of giving it away a bit there. If you're, and the thing is, I do want to say this: if you're going to sort of come at me, right? A 40-year-old Tottenham fan that has followed them my entire life and start talking down to me and calling me stupid and calling me an idiot, and you lack the full perspective of what Tottenham were before the past few years of you watching them, just take a back seat. It doesn't mean you can't have an opinion. I'm not saying that. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination doing any of this American fans, Australian fans, don't come at me. Don't. I'm not doing the little Englander routine. I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is, if you honestly say I wanted to get into Premier League football 4 or 5 years ago, and I choose Tottenham because I quite like their narrative or whatever, and then you start speaking to people who have supported the club their whole life and calling them stupid and calling them idiots, when they're actually making a point that you could take something from, it might not fit your agenda. It might not fit the kind of the vision that you have for the club right now. But what I'm saying is don't enter into these conversations and start insulting people and telling people that they're talking no sense. When to me, it makes complete sense to say, I have seen Tottenham perform my whole life to a certain level, right? When we've actually had less in place, when we've had less reason to perform at a certain level, because we've always had a baseline, we've had a weight of history behind us, right? We're a club of a certain stature, right? And that sees us in a certain place within the food order. And I know this stuff, the pecking order, right? And this stuff always does realign, right? These things are always in flux. Nothing's ever in stasis. Manchester United, a prime example. Yes, I take that on board. But my point is, right, you can't look to every other thing other than the manager, than just wanting to say the manager should be doing better, to explain why Tottenham Hotspur have lost 15 Premier League matches this year and why Tottenham continue to look like a side that just has no real handle on what they're supposed to be doing. I don't buy it. I don't think that this group of players is as bad as people make out. I don't think they're great, right? I don't think they're brilliant, but I don't think this is a bad group of players. I don't buy that. I don't think they are. I think we've got some really, really talented footballers in there. The squad is a work in progress, right? There was an interesting conversation earlier that I sort of shoehorned my way into. Jack Pitbrook and Nathan A. Clark were talking about this on Twitter, essentially saying that look, Tottenham's talent ID probably doesn't get enough credit, right? A lot of these young players that Tottenham are buying actually look exceptional. Lucas, and this was coming through the prism of looking at Lucas Berrival and his, Nathan had worked out, his things. I always call them pie charts. The kind of the map, the data mapping of Lucas Berrival's season this far. It's exceptional. He's an exceptional player. Like, all my kind of trepidation about him being 18 years old and are we chuck, he's exceptional. Like, it's been a baptism of fire. But the discussion was centering around the fact that Tottenham's talent ID for these younger players has been probably underrated. It's gone under the radar because of how terrible our season has been. And the point that was being made there is because Tottenham are doing very well at buying a lot of these young players. What we're not doing so well at is buying the 24, 25-year-olds, right? The players who you can just chuck in now who are going to make a big difference. I take that on board as well. I take that on board. But as I said I can't remember if it was a pre-match preview or one of these or whatever. I was saying in a pod quite recently, I think it was maybe the one I did with Tom Foynes. We were essentially making the point that you can look at this, right? If you followed Tottenham for whatever amount of time, it doesn't matter how long you follow Tottenham, right? But you can look at Spurs and you can say there's all these reasons, right? There are plenty of reasons why Tottenham should have a bad season. But I think the frame of reference for what a bad season for Tottenham should look like would be Spurs look like they're going to finish eighth. Spurs have been knocked out of all the competitions. Maybe we're clinging on in Europe, but Spurs look like they're going to finish eighth. And I think with everything that's happened to the squad maybe this year, with the idea of it being a rebuild, I think I would say 90% probably of Spurs fans, doesn't matter if they're Ange in or Ange out or whatever, I think 90%, I honestly believe this, I think 90% of Spurs fans would look at it and say, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. The squad's not in a place. We've had a few injuries, and that's a bad season. We're not pushing for the Champions League. Probably won't even get Europa League. We might be finishing in a Conference League place. That's annoying. That's a bad season for Tottenham. But fair enough. I understand that. We are we are justifying constantly being cut adrift in the bottom half of the Premier League. Right. The only reason why we're actually genuinely not in a relegation fight is because the teams below us are so absolutely abysmal this season, utterly abysmal. That's the only reason Tottenham aren't in a relegation fight. Like this isn't just an off season for Spurs. This is an aberratively abysmal season for Tottenham. This is an aberratively abysmal season for Tottenham. So when people come at you with this whole kind of, what do you expect? Who do you think you are? How entitled are you? You think your club, as Vince Rigari was saying the other day to Spurs fans, right? Vince Rigari, who has started giving a bit of interest to Tottenham because he's written a book about the manager, right? So he has a vested interest, a real balanced opinion, right? A real balanced opinion to come in and lecture fans of a club who have followed a club for 20, 30 years, right? To tell them they're idiots, to tell them they're stupid. Yeah, I see it, Vince. I see it, mate. Nice one. Yeah, you start calling people stupid, you start calling people reactionary or pea-brained, but what you've got the most balanced take on it, right? A guy that's written a book about the manager that's in charge. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. A real no vested interest there whatsoever in maintaining the allure around this guy, right? People that have picked up the club in the past couple of years or followed this club because they like the manager, right? Saying that this is fine. This is fine. This is appalling. I've watched Tottenham enough to know that this is appalling. The results are appalling. Our form's appalling. Our position in the league is appalling. And the way we play football is terrible. It's appalling. We don't scare opposition teams at all. We're there all patting ourselves on the back because we beat RZ Alkmaar. We beat RZ Alkmaar the other night at home. And it's all vindication. Imagine doubting Ange Postecoglou. Imagine doubting Ange Postecoglou. We turned over the might of RZ Alkmaar. We're a club that just a handful of years ago was slapping Real Madrid up in the Champions League. We're a club that just a few years ago was getting to Champions League finals. Don't sit there and tell me that I'm some sort of moron or entitled, deluded Tottenham fan to not be happy with what this season is. To be sat there clutching at limping over the line against RZ Alkmaar. A team that way worse Tottenham teams than this would have routinely dispatched in the Europa League, UEFA Cup, right? It's just nonsense. And it's just such a tell. It's such a tell. It's the whole, Inglorious Bastards 3-3 thing. When people start saying, you doubted Ange, and look at what he's managed to do. He's managed to beat RZ Alkmaar. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It's nonsense. And it's either it's a form of gaslighting, or it's just simply you don't get it. And that's it. I'm not going to mince because people, the thing is, this season, I will tell you, this season, honestly, has been the most toxic and vitriolic I've ever found it doing this podcast, right? I've always actually gotten on all right doing this, right? I've had various big opinions in the past, and I've had plenty of people, Conte, all that. I would spout off about Conte, all that type of thing. And I get plenty of people say, I like him, but I get this, I get the point. You can have more of a discussion about it. This year, the sort of messages you get, I've had one guy who may be watching this or maybe not, actually managed to somehow find my personal email address and has been sending me abuse because of because of my opinions on a football manager, because of my opinions on here. Like, it's been the most toxic and vitriolic season. Genuinely, for me, worse than the Mourinho era, worse than the sort of people that the way in which you're spoken to about this is preposterous. And I'm not going to extend that same courtesy anymore. I'm not saying anybody that likes Ange Postecoglou is this, it doesn't get it or is stupid. You're still allowed to have a difference of opinion, right? I'd be lying if I said there wasn't still a little bit of me, right, that still thought maybe if he gets a third year, actually maybe we might turn a corner, right? Against my every other fiber of my being that says this is done, there's still that little shred of me. So I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the people that just chest out, wade into these conversations, and will happily say to anybody who doubts Ange Postecoglou that they're stupid, that they're reactionary, that they're pea-brained, that they're morons, all these other types of things, right? And put in far worse terms than that, I'll say, you don't get it. You just don't get it. And that's fine. But that's a big tell on your part. And I think the thing is, the reason why I think you get so abusive, and I think the reason why you speak to and belittle people in that way is because you know it. Because you know ultimately that you don't get it. That you just fancy this manager. You've picked up Spurs as a bit of a hobby because you like the manager, right? And you don't like being told by other people that this thing that you have invested your time in, this man, not a thing, this person, this manager, right, is no good. And it's an insult to you, to your own ego, to your own appreciation of football, of the game. And just had a great career to this point. He has done. I'm not going to take that away from him. I've never at any point, I don't think I have. Like, please, if you've got receipts, then I'll hold my hands up to it. But as far as I can remember, I've always been respectful to him and what he's done to this point. I've never said he's an Australian, what does he know, or anything like that, right? Some of my best friends are Australian. Yes, I said it. Some of my very good friends. One of my very best mates, Jonathan, bought me this for my birthday, and I'm wearing it today. If you can, well, if you're not watching it, if you're listening to it, he bought me a big Ange Postecoglou, kind of as a bit of a joke because he knows I've been digging him out, but bought me a big Ange Postecoglou t-shirt, which I'm wearing right now. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Um, I've never said anything about his heritage, never said anything about his nationality, never said anything about the leagues in which he's managed. You can only ever beat the teams that are in front of you. And to this point, he has beaten pretty much everybody that's been in front of him. And he's got a glittering past up until this point. He's won plenty of trophies. He's done magnificently. And he's grown in a culture that, in Australia, that is, that classically doesn't really like football, doesn't really like soccer, you know? But he's done that and he's achieved great things. And that's fine. But for me, this is the end of the road for him here at Tottenham. I just feel that. I think the bar is set so low now. The bar is set so, and I sort of had this moment of realization for the past few weeks because I've kind of, I've been toying with the idea of a lot of this stuff, right? I've been toying with a lot of these thoughts and a lot of these feelings, right? That it's done, that it's not quite right. But I have sort of held back a bit. All right, I had a slip on Boxing Day after I've been drinking whiskey all day, right? Oh, you're hard. He says, does I not drink? But I've been drinking whiskey all day and I started a pod by slurring. That's it. He's got to go. Ange's got to go, right? I would say I've tried to be like, look, just maybe that is reactionary. Come on, scale it back. Take on board everything that's happened. I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to do that. And like I say, as much as there is still a shred of me that I think 'cause part of it comes down to I want him to do well. I want Tottenham to do well. I want the manager in charge of Tottenham Hotspur to do well because I want Tottenham Hotspur to do well. I'm not sitting here saying I hope we lose because then it'll mean he'll get sacked. I'm not doing all that stuff. I'm not buying into that stuff, right? And people who are skeptical of Ange, you can't lump them all in with people that say things like that. And I think half the time people say stuff like that flippantly, whatever. But I'm not going to speak on behalf and I'm not going to defend other people for things that they say. I just, it's just done. Like I just watch this. Do you know what I mean? I watch this week by week, and I'm just bemused as to what we're doing. What's going on here? What is going on now? We can keep saying, "Oh yeah, we're throwing it all into the Europa League," but why? Why? How is that an excuse? I don't get it. I don't like again. We're talking about this normalization of just like lessened expectations. Like some abysmal Tottenham teams before have juggled trying to do as well as they can in the Premier League alongside playing in the UEFA Cup or Europa League. You can't just say, oh well, it doesn't matter if you've lost again in the Premier League. It doesn't matter if you've lost again in the Premier League because we're throwing it all into the Europa League. That's just absolute nonsense. It's nonsense. That's not a thing. You can't talk about a rebuild. You can't talk about building a winning mentality. Sitting there saying you don't have the stomach. You can't say people don't have the stomach for a rebuild when they're actively irritated by the fact that Tottenham keep losing games. And you're sitting there trying to say it doesn't matter if you lose. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. League's done anyway. That's not how it works. I'm sorry. Like, it's just this kind of like, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm going to start shouting it out my window. If you've seen Network, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen Network, watch it. A fantastic film. I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. It's just, this isn't a thing. This isn't a thing. Like, you don't just get to say that it doesn't matter. You don't just get to say that other people being annoyed about Tottenham losing games, game after game after game, that it doesn't matter. And the thing is, like, you say it so confidently, right? You say it so confidently, like we've actually won the Europa League. What happens if we get turned over by Frankfurt? What happens then? Do you concede at that point? Do you concede at that point that this guy doesn't have it? You know? Who is it I got dug out by earlier? Let me see. I'll name and shame. Who's it that dug me out earlier? Stateside Spurs. At coys _stateside. Talking to me about not having the stomach for a rebuild. That old line. That old chestnut. Right? His pinned tweet. You temperamental Ange out freaks and haters. They'll look foolish by the end of the season. Stay on that side. We won't welcome you back. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? So if Tottenham win something, what? People aren't allowed to be happy about that because they've had reservations over a manager. And this is what I'm talking about. This navel gazing. And I know people say, "Oh, don't dog pile somebody." If somebody's coming at me with abusive messages, I'll name and shame, and I don't give a fuck anymore. All right. So I'm getting plenty of this sort of nonsense from people. People that think they can just pop up and say whatever they want to you and not get anything back. It's nonsense. And they're posting all this stuff out. Stay on that side. We won't welcome you back. Stay on what side? Being a Tottenham fan? Sorry, mate. I've supported this club my entire life, right? Just because I have reservations over a manager, you don't get to tell me when I can't celebrate or be happy about Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. All right. I spend basically every minute of every day nearly thinking about this stupid football club and have done for decades. This navel gazing, moronic, tribal bollocks can just be done away with. God, this has been something of a rant. But do you know what I said? I didn't do this stream straight after the game because I was annoyed, and I'm still annoyed because in that time, Newcastle United have gone and won a trophy. After 70 years of winning nothing, Newcastle United have just won a trophy, and we are, yeah, we're back to the bottom half of it, aren't we? I mean, it's you know, why can't we just, why can't it just like work? You know, why can't it just work? Game changing stadium, all that. Just won't. Dwayne3 says, thoughts on Mr. Reliable Ben Davis. I think this is Dwayne3 that's actually sent me a number of abusive messages because I said I like Ben Davis earlier on in the year. And he's the first one in the chat today. Hello, Dwayne. Get a life, mate. But also, yeah, Ben Davis had a terrible performance today. Really, really appalling. But as we say of so many other players, he's just come back from injury. He's been missing for a while. He needs to get up to speed. But no, people don't like it when you say it of players that they don't like, though, do they? I mean, to be fair, I kind of didn't like it when people were using that to excuse Romero's poor performance the other day. So life makes hypocrites of us all. Binny Guy says Udogi, Porro, Johnson, Solanke, and so many other players we signed past few years, all rubbish, below bang average players. Stop pretending. No more lies. Udogi, no, he's not. He's not a below bang average player. Sorry, I don't agree with you. Porro, nope. Again, he's not a below bang average player. Don't agree with you. Brennan Johnson, yeah, maybe. Maybe. Dominic Solanke definitely is not a below bang average player. Again, if you're coming at this from the perspective of being an Ange Postecoglou fan, being a guy, and you're looking for excuses as to why Tottenham's form is the way that it is, I would say that your manager has said several times in the past that he makes players better. That's some good clay he's got to work with there, right? What's he expecting to sign? Like, are you expecting him to have superstars all the way? You should be probably supporting Manchester City or something, mate. You know, and even then, a lot of their new signings don't hit the ground running. Pep Guardiola generally molds them into the sort of players he wants and needs them to be. But I'm not going to compare Ange Postecoglou to to Pep Guardiola because that would be unfair because he's one of the greatest managers of all time. So fair enough. Adam Harris says sack him 100%. Jack Darkin says should have gotten rid months ago. Beat Plate says I'm really in two minds now. I think we maybe have a slightly better chance at Europa with Ange, but 15 losses and counting in the league is completely unacceptable. The excuses have run out. Yeah. Jay Green says it's the same performance game after game. Ollie 500 says give it to the plumber until the end of the season. PG, hi mate, says his approach doesn't work. Keegan tried it. Our dealers tried it. It didn't work in the 90s and it doesn't work now. Overseas Bad Actor says, I'll keep him for the Europa League alone, but as soon as he loses that, he should be sacked. If he wins the Europa League, he also gets sacked. We can't have our own Ten Hag scenario. The problem is that I agree with you on the kind of the Ten Hag side of things, but Daniel Levy, yeah, after 17 years of no trophy, right? If we win a major European competition in the Europa League, there's absolutely no chance. There's no chance Ange Postecoglou gets sacked. Just in my opinion, there's no chance. There's no chance he goes. None. None whatsoever. Junkbot says Frankfurt must be licking their lips for that draw. Yeah, they looked really quite good actually. Watching them the other day against Ajax, but look, we'll wait and see, won't we? Chris from the UK says, the group Ange has is way better than the Gross squad. This season has been a total disaster. I mean, but this is the thing, right? Christian Gross is not just held up as like the worst Tottenham manager of all time. He's one of those names. If you watch any sort of NAF sport program, League of Their Own, all that type of stuff, right? Christian Gross is one of those names that gets chucked up in the pantheon of just terrible Premier League managers, right? This guy's genuinely doing as bad as that. And this is the point I keep throwing back to. The point I keep throwing back to isn't just Spurs are having an off season. Spurs are having an appalling season, like a historically appalling season. This isn't just finishing outside Europa League places bad. It just isn't. I'm repeating myself, but there we go. Quazed says, fair play to him for getting this far, but it's also evident that this manager isn't up to it. And it's so painful to watch it continue. And as if you said previously, this has become normalised. Jask says, of course, Newcastle have won the final. What, just get to the final of the Europa and get mauled by United, then beat them 4-0 next season? Yeah, I don't know. I was watching, I couldn't help but watch that, the cup final and basically seeing Newcastle do the thing that Spurs haven't been able to do for so long now is, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. And I don't know. I don't know. It's just depressing. Like it's the thing is it's actually depressing. It's depressing seeing Spurs this bad. It's seeing more and more of the things that you clutch onto, like, well, we've been bad, but at least Newcastle have won something for 70 years. Leicester winning the Premier League. Leicester winning an FA Cup. All these kinds of things where you're just like, there's just got to be someone somewhere that can write this. And we came agonizingly close with Pochettino. Agonizingly close. But that's that, isn't it? Bevlar says we're going to lose at least 23 games this season before it ends. That's embarrassing. Injuries or not, we are joint 15th. Chris Chapman says, when did we last go into an international break having not lost a game? I don't know. I guess I'm hoping you're just saying that as an interesting aside, not let Ange off today because we always lose ahead of international breaks. Because, Cricket 87 says, Europa there for grabs. Go get a decent stopgap manager and we can win it. Our half of the draw is not that bad. I mean, that's an interesting one. I don't know what people think about stopgap managers. Managers. I think a lot of people have said something about Rafa Benitez, and I'm not really on board with that. To be honest with you. Available coaches from Transfer Market. Just having a quick look and seeing which ones I wouldn't mind. Gareth Southgate, not for me. Just saying. I mean, he galvanised England at first, didn't he? No, I'll resist the temptation on that one. Joachim Low, too much of the scratch and sniff. Right, I couldn't bear that. Did you? Could anyone else? Are we having that? Are we having scratch and sniff on the sideline at Tottenham? No. Eric Ten Hag. You know, he won a few trophies for Man United. Played some good football with Ajax a few years ago. Maybe it just was Manchester. The funny thing is, right? The funny thing is about Eric Ten Hag is he'll show up at a Fulham or somebody like that in the not so distant future and probably look really good. I could honestly see Eric Ten Hag, right, going to Brighton, somebody like Brighton, right, and just doing a really good job, and everybody suddenly being like, "Oh yeah, Ten Hag was actually a really good manager when Man United signed him," and it's just Man United. Man United's like a poison chalice, right? That doesn't mean I want him at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, though. Xavi, no, does he fancy it? Do you think? Allegri. So a lot of people have said Allegri's off to Saudi. He's got a contract lined up in Saudi next year. So because when it's been sort of when the point has been raised before that Allegri could be the manager for Spurs on like a on a temporary basis. That's the word I was looking for. That Allegri could be the manager for Spurs on a temporary basis. People say, why would he come to Tottenham? Allegri's not going to come to Spurs on a temporary basis. But I think that's always been viewed through the prism of him having a job lined up next season, right? That's what I was. That's what I was always under the impression of, anyway. Um, Maybe not. Who knows? Um, anyway, look, I'm not. I can carry out Gary O'Neill. You know, give it, give it Sean Dyche to the end of the season. Russell Martin went on. Russell Martin went on Sky Sports the other day, didn't he? And tore Ange Postecoglou to pieces. Which I kind of, do you know what? I did sort of think like, come on, fella, like have some shame, a bit. Like have some shame. I'm just saying, I know Russell Martin did a really good job in the championship and everything, but come on. There's saying Tottenham should be doing better, and then there's lending your kind of your voice to an evisceration of another manager's tactics when you've really had one of the worst Premier League seasons of all time and gotten sacked halfway through it. Like, come on, come on. Steve Cooper, the man that Felonious Filth of the Fighting Cock said, looks like looks like he's always just wrestled his way out of a headlock, which as has stayed with me for a long time. It's very funny. A lot more comments today. Tom McCarthy actually said Rafa Benitez as a stopgap. Not for me. I'm not going to lie, mate. Not for me. Charlotte, somebody called Charlotte has written to me saying, Ange's complete lack of accountability makes me even more desperate for him to be given the boot. His whole, I've been a manager for 25 years. How dare anyone question me? Is arrogance dash insanity. I like the cut of that Charlotte's jib. I agree, though. Polarized says we have zero technical security in key positions, besides a 19-year-old midfielder and Maddison when he's up for it. Adam Phillips says he has to be sacked over the international break. Lama All Sports, I knew we'd get done by them. They're they're a slightly more competent version of us. Thomas Mullen says worst Spurs side I've seen in 60 years. Wilson T, appalling. What's the cons of sacking him now? I can't see any. Get Wells and Mason in even. Zeros and Ones says, worst thing about this is after we sacked Pochettino, I remember a podcast with a couple of non-Spurs fans saying, be careful what you wish for. It's so, I've probably said it on here like loads of times, but I'll say it again for anybody new. Hello, if there's anybody new here. I've said it on here before, but it doesn't surprise me that in Lloris's autobiography, he couldn't, he could not believe he was saying how him and Kane could simply not believe that Pochettino had been sacked. They couldn't believe. They could not. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that Tottenham had sacked Pochettino. To them, it was just unthinkable. They said, "Yeah, we were having a terrible season." I think Lloris was basically saying, "Yeah, they were having a terrible season, but they just lost the Champions League final, and they'd get back on track. They all knew they'd get back on track. They were just sulking, basically. They were depressed. They were sulking. They just lost the Champions League final, but they knew Maurizio was the guy to get them out of it. I can't believe it. You know, it still cuts, man." Callum Rigdon says, "My biggest fear is there's no way back from this season. I can't trust us to strengthen our squad enough to keep up with the Villas and the Newcastles." Well, mate, yeah, you're touching on a bruise there that I know exactly what you're saying. I know that feeling because I look at somebody like Villa. I mean, let's just have. I just want to see the Premier League again. Let's see what the Premier League table is. So Villa this year, they're sat ninth in the table, right? Quarterfinals of the Champions League. So, you know, you can understand why they've perhaps, they're finding that new normal, right? But you look ahead of Aston Villa, you see Fulham, you see Brighton, you see Newcastle, City, Chelsea, Forest, Arsenal, Liverpool. Just behind Villa, you see Bournemouth, you see Brentford, United, Palace. Then you got Tottenham down there in 14th now, or joint 15th, as it keeps being flagged with me. But let's be real. I'm on your side, but we're only saying joint 15th because it makes it sound worse, right? Like we're 14th, right? We've got a better goal difference than Everton, so we're not joint 15th. Like we've got as few points as Everton, but you know we're not joint 15th. And West Ham as well. Sorry, I say that West Ham as well. But we've lost more games than both of those teams. Lost more games than them. Just got a better goal difference. So you know, um, for balance, we've actually won more games than both of those teams as well. Though I do have to throw that in. But yeah, to your point, Callum, like Fulham look like a good side. Villa, as I say, they look brilliant. I watched Newcastle this afternoon, and you suddenly look at it and you think that team is absolutely oozing talent. It's dripping with talent, and they're really good. They play really good football. They do. Eddie Howe's done a job there. Eddie Howe's he's defied the critics. He has, He's kept Newcastle competitive throughout his entire tenure. He's won Newcastle their first trophy in 70 years. And I get it. I know they are backed by a literal nation state now, right? And I'm not doing the old like the drill tweet. No, I don't have to hand it to ISIL or whatever it is. I'm just saying they haven't done this. They haven't approached this in a way of signing Mbappe, signing Haaland, all that type of thing, right? Kind of because financial fair play hasn't allowed them to do that, but they've made a lot of pretty smart acquisitions. I mean, the reason why their cheat code comes into play is because they will never have to bulk at or worry about paying significant wages to anybody, right? The sort of thing that has held Spurs back. And I'm not saying it should have held Spurs back. Daniel Levy should have done more to address that. But things like that are never going to hold Newcastle back, right? But what you have to give Newcastle as well, just to say, is that the mentality constantly from the top has been, we want to win stuff. Still at Spurs, it has been, and I've critiqued this a lot of Daniel Levy, is always, what are we supposed to do? But I'm sort of spitballing quite a lot of Callum Rigdon's point here. I share a lot of your concerns, Callum. I know exactly what you're saying, because the problem is with Spurs, it seems to be that, when it will be Paul O'Keefe or somebody like that who is in the know, will often say, well, the feeling is at Spurs, as it was when we signed Richarlison, right? and he wasn't doing very well. And we were talking about Harry Kane going. We were talking about who do we replace Harry Kane with them? Where do we spend the Harry Kane money? The ITKs were all basically saying, well, the club feel that they just shelled out 60 odd mil on Richarlison a year ago. And that was kind of the slow burn replacement for Harry Kane. So, yeah, we don't expect Spurs to drop big money on a Harry Kane replacement. And it was only until, Richarlison got injured and we looked pretty abject that they were suddenly like, oh, yeah, maybe we should sign Solanke. But again, anybody remotely ITK or in the press has sort of said that Postecoglou, Langer, and various other people in the background they were like kicking Levy's door down saying, we have to sign Dominic Solanke. We have to sign him. And Levy apparently didn't want to do it. He still didn't want to do it. And so the sense that we are going to look at this and think, you look at somebody like Odegaard, right? Odegaard, who I think is incredibly promising. I think he's brilliant, and I've been an advocate of his, right? I think he's great. But my point is, he's young, he's learning, right? He's learning on the job. But what he's shown already in the short time he's been involved is somebody that can run at players and, importantly, take players on and beat them, occupying one of those positions in the top end of the pitch can be a bit of a game changer for us, right? But are Spurs going to go out and sign a world-class 25, 26-year-old doing that type of job and allow somebody like Odegaard to continue to grow? No, of course they're not going to do that. I mean, if they do, great. If they do that, again, hold my hands up and it'll be wonderful and it'll be great. And I'll be delighted about that. But are we going to do that? I don't think we are. I don't think we are, because what they're going to say is we've just spent 50, 60 mil on Brennan Johnson and we've just spent 30, 35 mil on Wilson Odegaard. We've just given Son Heung-min a new contract, which is costing us 200 grand a week or whatever. I'm just picking a figure out of thin air. So, if you're hoping for, I mean, I know Marmoush's now gone to Manchester City, but a player like that, right? I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. And the thing is, the Villas of this world are doing that. Even the Bournemouths of this world are doing that. They're spending money every single window, loads and loads of money on players that are readily available, ready to go right now. Nottingham Forest are doing that. I know Nottingham Forest are spending loads of money. I know they've got a wealthy owner. Their owner's not as wealthy as Tottenham's. And so I do get it. I know I'm doing a bit of an about turn here. It almost sounds like I'm kind of, I'm saying, well, leave Ange Postecoglou alone because look at what he's dealing with. Look at the circumstances in which he's trying to get a tune out of this Tottenham team. And I think, if you want to view it through that type of lens, you can say, yes, there are mitigating reasons, mitigating factors as to why Tottenham are not competing for Champions League football this year, why we aren't in the race for that. Yes. There are not mitigating enough circumstances, though, as to why Tottenham are sat 14th or joint 15th in the table. They just aren't. And it's two very different things. And the thing is, the problem is now, it's such a bad faith argument. These things are just getting melded into one. It's all just getting pushed together, melded into one thing, one entity. This is what Tottenham are. This is how it exists, and this is why it exists. And if you don't see that, there's so much more to it than that. You can't just mush this all into a one size fits all solution that fits your agenda. Because I completely say, and I hold my hands up on here constantly and say, this is really my gut feeling. This is my feeling. This is my interpretation of what's going on. But I don't ever want to say there aren't circumstances or reasons that have been presented to Ange Postecoglou that have made his job harder. I say that constantly, and it's true because it's true. Because it's true. That is absolutely true. That's objectively true. But the point I still come back to is it doesn't justify Tottenham being as bad as they are this year. This like it's just I know I'm a broken record. I know it, but I have to keep making this point. I have to keep making this point. This season is appalling. It's appalling. I've said it about 15,000 times. Mark Ainsworth says he should have been gone a long, long time ago. I never expect us to win going into a match against anyone these days. Adam Phillips says he came here from piss pot leagues thinking he knows it all. uh, PG says this all shows how woeful Scottish football is. I'll let yous have it out with a Scottish boy. That's a terrible. God, that's awful. That's a terrible. I thought I'd be able to do a Scottish accent. Maybe not. Is that a bit more Northern Ireland? That's a bit more Northern Irish, isn't it? Terrible. Look, I'm on the spot, all right? I'm not here to do funny impressions, man, right? Pyromaniac says Ange's ego has been inflated from his work in lesser leagues. Your words, not mine, mate. Shane O'Neill says, I get the pushback over Davis. I'm sorry. It's the constant flip flopping from positive fans is the reason we're stuck with the likes of this rubbish for so long. We need to demand better. Look, I'll still say of Davis, mate, like all I've ever said of Davis, right, is that he is a reliable backup player. And he is for the most part, but I'm not really going to die on that hill today when he's turned in a 3 out of 10 performance because he has. But I still think it's rare. That's all I'm going to say. Fintan Quill says, I love you. I love you too. Thank you very much, mate. Um, Eli says the Ange support is a quasi-religious cult phenomenon at this point. I mean, some of it kind of feels that way. Some of it also feels like, as Ange, who is somebody who uses the internet a lot, apparently, and does have burner accounts that he follows journos and things on. Maybe Ange just has loads of egg accounts and he's just out there digging people out and supporting himself. There's a I won't name names on this one, but there's a well-known Tottenham blogger who rumor has it makes his own blog look a lot more popular by creating. Yeah, he's still got an online blogging platform, and underneath there's a comment section, and apparently on there he's got lots of alternate personas that he basically logs into his own website on and says that was a great article, that was brilliant, and everything. Not going to name names. Not going to name names. But if you know, you know. Maybe Ange does that. Llama All Sports says, I can't believe Cess did that today. I bet he's never done something like that in training and never will again. It was such a kick in the stones. Yeah, I know. And there's that. I couldn't. The thing is, do you know what? I couldn't even be angry with him today. Like all the whole kind of don't celebrate. So I wouldn't have cared. He could have run over celebrating. I just thought fair enough to the lads. Like it's all right. You know, this isn't about him. This is about us. Um, it's almost like Lamo, like we're that terrible that even Ryan Sessegnon's doing that to us. He was a fine young player. He's having a great career, but I mean, again, let's be real. Like Ryan Sessegnon's been off the boil for quite some time. Oh, here's an interesting one. Alan Leslie says, I don't know if you've covered it already, but what did you make of Tell going to the away support? Yeah, a lot has been made of that, but I saw the video and people saying, well, all these fans abusing Tell. I didn't get that impression at all. People was like when he was what people were shouting, I felt like they were shouting at the team saying it's not good enough, it's not good enough. But it looked like Tell was having a decent chat with the lads at the front, um, who were all sort of, it seemed to end quite amicably, quite respectfully. And I think people really respected Tell going over to the fans and kind of say, looked like he was saying, look, sorry, I know it's not good enough, but we've all got to stay in this together. We've got to, stick together here, sort of pleading to the fans to stay on side with the players and believe in them and all that type of thing. And it felt like, he fronted up to them. He went over there, he had a chat, he made his case, and he ended up walking off and everybody was chanting, I apologize to who this offends, but they were all chanting that at him, which is generally an accepted sign, isn't it? That Tottenham fans like a particular footballer, right? Um, so that seemed to end all quite nicely and quite well, didn't it? I don't know. Um, Jay Green says every post interview is rinse and repeat. We must learn it hurts, etc. How many wake up calls do you need before you act and learn? Yeah. Adam Phillips says, I still believe Amazon played a big part in Poch sacking. So do I, even more so after Lloris's autobiography, I've got to say. Yeah, I don't know. It was just funny. It was a weird moment, wasn't it? It was a weird moment. Um, Justin Hall has been an interesting one. Save yourselves the depression. Nothing has changed or is going to change. Rather race pigeons or get race pigeons is like brilliantly specific, Justin. I've got to say, I'd rather race pigeons or get another passion. I'm done now. It always comes back to Enoch and Levy. You can talk till you're blue in the face. I tend to go red in the face more than blue, to be fair, but they always buy crap players. I'm not actually even interested. No, hang on. Not even interested in football. Them at the helm will always be cursed. Yeah, kind of feel that way, innit? Floaty08, hello, mate. Old mate of mine. I've been Angeing up until today, but I think it's done now. Even if we win Europa League, he needs to go at the end of the season latest. Start lining up the replacement. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know, mate. Should I do the? I think I feel like I've been ranting a hell of a lot today. The problem is, right? I don't know if I even. It's sort of one of those days where I'm like, do I want to do the players? Because I don't. I don't feel like anyone was. I mean, Ben Davis wasn't very good, so I guess I probably should. Um, yeah, let's do the players. So, Vicario, good, but it's not a particularly popular take. But I think, although it was a sort of a series of errors that saw us concede the first goal, I still kind of think he could have done better with it. I do. I would have expected better from Vicario, I've got to say. I know he maybe saw it late. I know maybe a defender in the way or something, but I'd be expecting a sort of a top class keeper to be knowing that an attacker will be going for one of the corners from that position, right? It just, I don't know. I would have expected better from him. That's usually bread and butter for Vicario. But other than that, I thought he was good. Don't really think he could have done anything with Sessegnon's goal. It was well hit. Fine. Jed Spence, I think he tried his best today. Do you know what I mean? He tried to do what he could constantly, as he always does. No complaints on his performance from me today. I think I think he's a fantastic player. Fantastic player, good performance. Tried to do what he could. Christian Romero, it was basically him coming off the pitch that saw Tottenham lose, wasn't it? So I'm not going to really say anything about Christian Romero. I think it was a solid, decent enough performance. I want to say, actually, I've got to say there were a couple of like really, really good line breaking passes he made in the game, which is what you would expect from him. It is what he brings to this team. He allows us to build attacks from a defensive position, and yeah, it's fantastic from him. He's we know he's a great player. Ben Davies, yes, I know I often stick up for Ben Davies. I often talk about what a great club servant he is and what a valuable squad player he is. Today he was terrible. He was terrible today, and I will admit that. That's fine. It's not about my ego, and it's not about this. It's I'm trying to call things. Look, I don't have shares in Ben Davies. Do you know what I mean? Like Destiny Doggy, it was okay, wasn't he? But he's look. Let's be honest. He's not come anywhere close to the Destiny Doggy that we knew when he first joined the football club. Right? We know that. We know that he hasn't been that. But to say that he's never going to get back to that, to write him off now, a 22-year-old player, 22-year-old defender as well. Come on. Let's not be silly. Let's not be silly. Rodrigo Bentancur, bin, get rid. Archie Gray, yeah, I thought he was all right. He tried his best, didn't he? But he's been chucked in. He's been chucked in midfield. We've all been calling for that. Let's say it was an inoffensive performance, I would say, and that's about that. Then he obviously got shifted back to centre back, didn't he? When Romero came off, and it was a bit all over the shop. But it's tough, you're asking a lot from a player in his position, aren't you? It's I don't know. I just give him time. He's learning. Eve Basuma, bin. I've stuck up for Basuma quite a lot in the past, but it just sort of feels like it's maybe with a new manager it would be better, but him, Bentancur, I'm just sort of sick of them. Like they're falling into that group of players that we've had different sort of iterations of these down the years. These sorts of players where you're just like, I know they're not all bad, but I'm also just sick of them. I can't be arsed for it. That's sort of where I am with him. Brennan Johnson, I've made my thoughts clear on him plenty in the past. Mathis Tell, I thought was really good. I thought Mathis Tell was really good. Playing out on the wing. A lot of people, when I was sort of saying, "Oh, maybe he needs a bit more time," people say, "No, he needs to be playing. He needs to be playing further out the pitch. He needs to be playing not further out the pitch. He needs to be playing like out wide." He'll do a job out there. He's a good player. And yeah, fair enough. He is. He's a good player. Dominic Solanke, pretty. If we're being real, I like Solanke. I like Solanke a lot. It was a pretty nothingy performance from him today, though. Come on, it was. Sonny came on, tried his best. Nothing really happened. Madison, was all right when he came on. Lucas Berval tried his best when he came on. Wilson Odegaard, not enough time. Dane Scarlett, not enough time at all. Look, it's been quite a heavy, quite an intense one, hasn't it? That apologise. It's it's just one of those days, isn't it? One of those days. It's a bit annoying, and nobody likes seeing Spurs lose football matches today. Don't like seeing Spurs lose, and we've lost a hell of a lot. We've lost a hell of a lot this this season. A couple more questions. Baz O'Brien says, try being a 53-year-old Spurs fan. I was a kid when we won back-to-back FA Cups and a UEFA Cup within 3 or 4 years. This makes it even worse. At least you got it, mate. I know what you're saying. I can imagine, like, it's the gap in time, isn't it? It's the gap on it. A friend of the pod, Philip Spencer, who I've interviewed on here before, back in the day. He he started supporting Spurs, and then they won the double, and he thought, "Wow, I've made a good choice here. Actually, this is good," because it was, half his family was Arsenal, half his family was Tottenham. He chose Tottenham. Tottenham won the double. He thought, "Nice one. I chose the right team," and the rest, as they say. Justin Hall, great channel. I wish you all the best. Cheers, Justin. Appreciate that, mate. Thank you. Manderson Kusi says, what's your take on the impending takeover? Is that a reason why he has not been sacked yet? Because others have been sacked for much less. Look, mate, I don't know. Is there an impending takeover? I don't know. It seems to be back forth all the time. That's a whole podcast in itself, I think. So maybe international break coming up. Maybe I'll do one then, right? Maybe we can talk about people who are interested in maybe talking about potential takeovers and stuff. Do something there in the international break, perhaps. Pyromaniac says, has Solanke been worth 65 million? Look, I think it's hard to say, isn't it? If what a player is worth, are they worth this? Are they worth that? But I think what we do know is that a player is, as people say, a player is worth what a club wants to pay for them, right? And Dominic Solanke's worth is that I think he's been really good for us. I think on balance, I think he's been really, really good for Spurs. I think he's probably been the best big money signing we've ever made. So, yeah, I quite like him. I like Dominic Solanke. Let's say he is worth £65 million. I think I'll call it a night. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you've tuned in live, thanks everybody for listening. If you are listening to the podcast, if you want ad-free podcasts, patreon.com/RTRpod. £1.50 a month, you can have all of the pods ad-free. Also good for people that just want to support the show. You want to show a bit of appreciation, help keep the lights on. Fantastic. Thank you very much. If you want to support the show a bit more and get more podcasts and stuff, you can join the Inner Sanctum, as it's called, on Patreon as well. Patreon.com/RTRpod. If you don't want to do any of that, then don't. Fine. I get it. It's all good. You can enjoy your free content. All I ask in exchange for that free content is that you do all the liking and subscribing stuff. You leave any ratings, leave any reviews, and share it wherever you share stuff. When you see people on Reddit saying, I'm looking for a Spurs podcast to listen to, say, listen to this melt. Listen to this reactionary melt lose his arse after every Tottenham game. I can be your man. I can be your man for that. Look, like I say, I think that's enough for one night. Got an international break to look forward to now. I'll try to do some sorts of pods during that time. So, yeah, we'll see. But anyway, much love. Try and keep faith in some sort of way. Keep faith that we can maybe win the Europa League. There you go. But always and forever, I will stay on my side. And that side is Tottenham Hotspur. Up the Spurs. Come on, you Spurs. We'll do it one day. Maybe. But until that day, who knows? We can just be miserable and make miserable podcasts and listen to the editors, can't we?